Hey guys, it is Brian, and in this video we're going to check out the result of a benchmark I did between Unity 7.3 and Compiz 0.9, KDE Plasma 5.2 with KWin 4.5.2, and GNOME 3.14 with GNOME Shell 3.14.4. So in my last benchmarking video it was around overclocks, and we did overclocks on the Catalyst 15.3 beta driver and Mesa 10.6. We didn't do overclocks against Mesa 10.5.2 because it sucks. Now in this benchmarking video we're going to talk about Unity versus Plasma versus GNOME. Now there's a couple new things in this table here. We've got RAM usage at idle, we've got the window manager, and we've got the desktop environment. I've also made some changes to this table here, specifically around notes. The display manager is LightDM. I think that this is an important variable because both GNOME and KDE like to use their own display manager. I just wanted to use LightDM because that's what Unity and Ubuntu uses, and that's my default operating system environment anyways, so that's what I'm going to stick with. Also, unredirect is enabled, and what that is basically all window effects and everything is suspended when a full screen application is full screen. With KWin you can set that up. I think that it's called suspend desktop effects for full screen windows or something, but it's all the same thing. And the INIT system is Upstart. I've had some issues with systemd or systemd or whatever the hell that it's called. In general, it takes longer to start. I've had some weird things happen upon login, and I just didn't want to deal with it, so I just went back to Upstart, and I'll stick with Upstart probably until the next release, and I'll give systemd a try. But for these benchmarks, I'm using Upstart. Shouldn't make a difference, but it's worth noting. So as far as the desktop environment and the window manager, these are all the stock default Ubuntu repositories. These aren't using any sort of special PPAs or special builds or anything like that. And then lastly, this RAM usage at idle, it was kind of like the temperature in my last video. It was there. The benchmark wasn't meant to test RAM usage or anything like that, but I figured, hey, it's worth checking out. If I'm using all of these desktop environments, why not check to see what the idle RAM usage is? And I actually thought it was kind of interesting. Oh yeah, and one last thing. You'll know that Mesa has been removed from the benchmark entirely. In the previous benchmark, we found that Mesa 10.5.2 pretty much sucked against Catalyst in every possible way, and I don't really see any value testing that again. And then as far as Mesa 10.6, the PPA that I used to get Mesa 10.6 is updated on like a weekly basis, so this week's benchmark result could be different than last week, could be different than next week, so it's kind of like trying to hit a moving target, and I don't really like that. I'll probably do another benchmarking series in the future that'll target the Mesa driver and all the different configurations that can go on with that driver. But for this particular benchmark, I just stuck with Catalyst. It's easier that way. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive into the results. As you can see, there's really not a lot to see. The biggest reason why I wanted to do this benchmark was because everybody, including me, had this odd assumption that perhaps if you used KWin, you would get better performance, or maybe if you used Compiz, or if you used GNOME Shell, you would get better performance, and I have personally never actually tested that. So here we are. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter, like at all, what desktop environment you use. In fact, if you look at RAM usage at idle, you'll notice that KDE consumes the most RAM, which really isn't that much more than, say, Unity or GNOME Shell. But even that had no effect. Looking over at the Unity column with the stock GPU clock, we've got FurMark at 7 frames per second, Julia 183, Volosplosion 7, Marble 35, Grid of Cylinders 12, Tokyo 7, Unengine Valley or Unengine Valley 10, War Thunder at 28. Now let's switch over to KDE, where we have FurMark 7 again. Julia is 182, Volosplosion is 7. Marble was 32, and I thought that was somewhat interesting because GNOME got 35 and Unity got 35, but KDE got 32. Grid of Cylinders got 12, Tokyo 7, the Valley benchmark 10, War Thunder at 28, with a marginally higher score than Unity. The GNOME benchmark was pretty much the same damn thing. And then switching over to the overclocked score. With Unity, we have FurMark 10, Julia 280, Volosplosion 11, Marble 53, Grid of Cylinders 18, Tokyo 11, Valley is 14, War Thunder at 36, and so on, and so on. So basically, there's not really much more to say. If there was ever a question in your mind, hey, I wonder if I switch to GNOME, would I get better performance? If I switch to KDE, would I get worse performance? The answer is going to be no. Shouldn't change at all. Now, if we take a step back and have more of a pragmatic look at the whole thing, the bigger question is, why would the desktop environment have any effect on your gameplay at all? Especially if the window manager supports unredirection, or whatever it's called, where basically it suspends all compositing and everything that happens outside of the full screen window. At that point, you basically don't have a desktop environment running. Your window manager is focusing on the full screen application in question. So with that said, why would the desktop environment have any effect at all? And the answer is, it doesn't. So I actually really like doing these benchmarks, and I have some ideas in mind for some other ones, but if there are any other benchmarks that you want me to cover, like something with the Mesa drivers, and if you have any other questions, leave me a comment, like the video if you're new, subscribe, and yeah, stay tuned for more. I really like doing these.